Steve, thanks for dropping by. I know it's a busy time of campaigning. So we're going to start with a very simple question. What's your favorite soccer memory?
So it's a great question, Duncan. I'm really pleased to be here, and thanks for asking. I'm going to give you three because they're kind of tied, but I'll be very, very quick. I think in no specific order, I think being signed to a pro contract was a huge, huge moment in my life because I had been injured a lot in college, and that pro career didn't last very long, but that was obviously an achievement of significance and also redemption from a lot of injuries. That's one. I think the second one, Duncan, would be I was asked to take over the Boston World Cup bid effort in 1990 when the Boston effort was ranked 29th and last of all cities and stadiums bidding for the World Cup. And it took 3 years, but we ended up being chosen in Boston as one of 9 sites. So that was a huge accomplishment, and I'm extremely proud of that. And then I think the third thing, and that's why I say no specific order, is spending 10 years coaching both of my boys in soccer and their friends, many of whom are now college players. And that was certainly the most meaningful time of my life during those 10 years. So those are the three memories, and I'll call them tied.
Right. So you talked about, you touched on coaching. So have you ever, what's your experience of playing or coaching or being an administrator in the adult amateur game?
Sure. So let's start with playing. So both because of talent and limitations and injuries, my ambitions ended at 24 when I was released in training camp by the Baltimore Blast in 1984, dating myself in the fall of 1984. And I ended up, unfortunately my statistics are more impressive for injuries, 4 broken legs and 13 operations. Those aren't goals and assists. And a lot of those came during the career, but a lot of the operations came afterwards. So actually from age 24 to 32, so my pro or rising career ended at 24. I couldn't play again until I was 32. And my wife, it was partially all the operations and partially my wife allowing me. So at 32, I joined the New England Over the Hill League, the New England Over the Hill Soccer League, which, as you know, is the biggest, I think, adult league in the country.
It is the largest adult league in the country,
And it's an exceptional league because there are 7 divisions at most age groups, and they go from over 30 to over 70, I think at this point, over 65. So it's a real cradle to grave experience. And I was fortunate enough to play in New England Over the Hill Soccer League for 20 years, from 32 to 52. So that's playing. In terms of coaching, obviously, I've coached my sons, I've coached at club, and coached my town teams, which included my sons have been on the board giving clinics and all that kind of stuff. And then I think also in the amateur area, obviously I've volunteered a lot in the club space, either as a lawyer or a director, and helped out in administration.
Wow, that's great. So US soccer, how do you think US soccer could help and assist us, the US adult soccer, to affiliate more adult players?
Sure. No, it's a huge issue and a huge problem, and I think about it and it shouldn't be. So, there's a lot of focus on youth, which there should be, obviously. But when you look at it, most players, their careers end at age 18. In other words, their rising careers, it's high school. If you're fortunate enough to be a college player, it ends at 22. Even if you're fortunate enough to be a pro, if you're, the 20th guy like me, it's 24, 23. If you have a great career, it could be 30 or even 32 or 34. Well, at that point, you want to stay connected to the game. You have at least 2/3 of your life and competitive play and ability ahead of you. So when you look at it, in most cases, youth might be U6 to U18. Adult is 19 to 70, right? So it's a very, very significant and important part of the situation. I think part of the surplus, as I said, part of the surplus is going to go back to different organizations. I think with respect to adult, I think part of that could be used for reach out and marketing campaigns for players near the end of their competitive careers. And also players who have lapsed. Because playing those 20 years in adult soccer, I had all sorts of teammates. I had ex-pro teammates who wanted to continue, ex-college stars who wanted to continue, ex-college players who didn't play much or had injuries and wanted to get better memories, players whose careers ended in high school, And then, as you know, players who really never played and got bitten by the bug, probably their skill level and technical ability wasn't that high, but their athleticism might have been, and their enthusiasm was maybe, sort of a late reformer. Their enthusiasm was maybe more than most other people. And so that is an unbelievable, sort of cross-section of people that play this game. So the potential is enormous. So I think part of those dollars should be used for marketing to those groups. I think you can reach people, right?
Yeah.
That's part of it. I think there has to be extreme focus on that from U.S. Soccer, because what I always say is, if any one segment of this game is hurting, then whatever other segment you're focusing on is hurting, because it's organic, it's holistic. So the adult side is extremely important, as important as any other side. So it needs more focus than it's had.
So it's Saturday morning in Orlando. You win the election. Sunday morning, what's your top 3 priorities?
Sure. So I think the first, again, I won't say it in order, but I'll say in other words, order of significance. But I think the first is giving voice back to all the councils. If there's one, everyone has different responsibilities and that sort of thing, and charges. But if the one common thing that I've found in this listening tour, Duncan, is that people don't feel listened to. In a lot of cases, they don't feel respected and they don't feel listened to. The people in the field, when U.S. Soccer is making decisions, the intelligence that people have in the field and the knowledge is essential, right? So I think giving voice back to all of the councils is the first thing. Concomitant with that, it's inclusion of those people in the decision-making process and using these great resources out there. So I think that's number one, right? Another thing that we need to do is we need to solve the infighting between all the sanctioning organizations, right? That is hurting at the youth and adult level. A youth board member, on my first stop on my listening tour, made this great analogy where he said there's a top line of registered players, and then underneath it there's all this fighting going on between sanctioning organizations, and U.S. Soccer is not getting involved in that. And what does that do? That causes confusion, double payments, if you're double carded and all that kind of stuff. People have to get on the same page for the good of the game. So what we want to do is we want to solve that infighting for the good of the game, make sure everyone's moving in the right direction. I think the third thing, and I think right now in the wake of the U.S. failure, people want to say, well, fix the national team. And guess what? I will, part of that answer, say that. Get the men moving in the right direction again, get the development system of the youth national teams up, keep the women on top, obviously improve their working conditions. But that's only part of the answer.
Right.
Every segment needs to be given attention, because if they're not all working together, right, again, it takes a village. If they're not all healthy, then the national team, so it's glib to say, I'll fix the national team. I want to give attention to and fix what ails every segment. Youth right now is extremely dysfunctional, extremely, with a lot of chaos, sanctioning organization problems, other issues. You have your challenges in adult as well. I wouldn't call it extremely dysfunctional at all, but what I would say is that you suffer from the sanctioning issue and infighting and the lack of attention. And I'm going to return that attention to the adult side.
Fantastic.
The athlete council, whether you're a men's or women's full national team, or you're Paralympic or beach or futsal, everybody needs to be respected there. And the athlete council, by the way, their charge and their focus is not just national team, it's all players. So the resources, I met yesterday with Cindy Cohn, Cindy Parlow-Cohn. She's she's the first person ever that I've spoken to who, when you say, you've heard this before, stop me. And about 3 times she said, I've read everything about you, I've heard this, move on. She's pretty intense, but she's amazing.
That's
right?
great.
She's really amazing. And I know she's involved, but there's so many people out there at every segment that are so knowledgeable, and we want to bring those people in there. Never, to help make decisions. Never again is there going to be a situation where you're part, of a state association or a member organization, and you wake up and you say, Chicago decided this.
Right.
You're going to be deciding your own fate. It's going to be iterative. We talk about the SRA issue now and all that kind of stuff. You're not going to just wake up and here there was a problem and a decision was made. It's going to be an iterative discussion. You guys are in the field. We're going to talk about it, try to solve it together. So use these massive resources of so many people who are knowledgeable. This has been a long process since last May, but I've met so many great people, when I first announced last May, and I've met so many great people, and there are so many people with great ideas, and they're going to be included.
Right. So, there's 8 candidates. Why you? Why are you the number 1 pick?
Well, that's a good question. So this has changed a lot. When I told my law partners, it was probably March of last year, that I'd like to do this for the good of the game, I explained what it would probably be. And I said it would be me against the incumbent, and here's how it would probably play out in terms of process and time demands and all that sort of thing. And now here we are, 8 months later, or 8 months from May when I announced. And the incumbent's not running, and we have 7 other candidates. It's dizzying. I think, and again, this is America, so we welcome everyone, and everyone's, I'm sure, doing it for the right reason. But as this has happened, and quite honestly, I have a great campaign team, and so I informed them. Another person's in, this person's in, and it was after October 10th, it was one after another after another. This 4, now it's up to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And they're very experienced, and they said, just put your head down and do what you need to do. And yes, it's a lot of names, and yes, it's messy, but none of those names take away from your profile. This is a job that demands 2 important things, 2 kind of extreme skill sets. One is you have to be a true soccer person. You have to have deep and continuous and broad soccer experience, because you have to understand all the constituencies. And it's got to be continuous, through most or all of your career, and it's got to be deep and broad and real. And then, of course, there's the other component. You have to have organizational leadership experience, and you have to have business experience, right? And we have a lot of impressive people in this race. We have incredible soccer people, national team players. Nothing I ever would have come close to, despite the injuries, because the talent wasn't there. So I have full respect for that. But I think that of the people with amazing soccer experience, they don't have, respectfully, they don't have the business experience. And then we have people with very impressive business experience, but with all due respect, they don't have the deep and broad and continuous soccer experience. So if you do, agree that what this job needs, this is not any organization. There was one question I got, well, it's 150 employees and it's $100 million. What qualifies you to do it? And of course I can talk about what qualifies me, but my first sentence is, this is not any 150 employee, $100 million organization. It is the soccer organization, right? So you need that unique background. And so, respectfully, I think if people agree that it does need those 2 distinct backgrounds, then I think from a merit-based standpoint, I'm the most qualified candidate, because I'm really the only one that has those bona fides in both areas.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you, Duncan. I appreciate it.
We'll see you in Orlando.
It's been great to go through this.